What's up, everybody, and welcome back into the Play the Fight Song College Football Show. Week 11 is upon us, and we have a ton to cover tonight. We have 5 main matchups that we're going to preview, 2 from the Big 12, 2 from the SEC, and of course, we got to sprinkle in a Big 10 look at the Indiana Hoosiers. So we will talk about in Indiana and Michigan tonight as well. As you can see, that's not JP down there. We have JT joining the show tonight in replacement of JP, who is traveling across the country. He is in the Eastern time zone in Georgia this weekend. JT is a part of our Iowa State fan perspective with Jake. So if you haven't seen him before, that's who he is. JT, welcome to the show. I got to get the JP flipping flopping back down.
Justin.
I was going to say, I was looking at that beforehand. Just got to switch out the one letter, but glad you guys had me back on. Glad that my picks the last couple weeks didn't keep me from not making it again.
Yeah, a little rough start on the ATS board for JT. Stands at 5-10. Reese is off to a horrible year so far, so maybe he can really turn.
I heard about your picks keeping you off this show. Look at my record for your buddy. They keep having me back, so you're in good hands. You're fine.
Yeah, so we forgive and forget here. Jake, right? How are we doing tonight?
I like to hold everybody to a higher standard, but I suppose that we could bring him back on. I don't know. We're going to see if he can get better. We did kind of leave him out to dry. I mean, last week was just a brutal week to be a part of.
I was going to say, I didn't do too much worse last week than everybody else. That made me feel a little better.
Last week was a brutal week for the Play the Fight Song crew. So hopefully this week we can turn it around. A lot of close spreads on the board this week. We were going to cover majority of them. I think we're going to put 10 on the ATS board, 2 different boards this week because there are some good matchups. We're deep into the conference season. Some things are starting to shape up. The college football playoff rankings release. Let's start there before we go into previews. I know JT and Jake got to break it down, but Reese, what were your thoughts on the college football playoff top 25? Army's in at 25 right in front of them, Missouri. A little bit of a joke there.
Yeah, we talked about it last night with our preview we kind of did for our G5 game of the week. But yeah, I think you get the Missouri getting in there because they do have the win over Vanderbilt. But it's also, I just think where they're at right now, too, when you look at where Missouri's at, I just don't think they're that good of a football program to be 0-24. Vanderbilt, I think they've proven a lot more. You had the bad loss to Georgia State. And yeah, you had the loss to Missouri, but you also had the very impressive win against Alabama. And you also had the very impressive loss, the only loss by a field goal against Texas. So, and that team is trending upwards too. I mean, they have a good game this week as well. They won on the road and won at War Eagle last week, won by 10. So I think that's kind of a snub on that part, but that's why it's earlier in the year. I think they're a team that could find a way to get in there by the end of it.
JT or Jake, any, you sleep on it, thoughts that arose from the top 25 first rankings release of the year?
I'll say Justin, you can speak what you had on your mind from you sent me another text today.
Yeah, I'm all sorts of fired up about the BYU and Indiana rankings. I thought those two teams specifically were just a little bit disrespected. I honestly didn't mind the committee's rankings from like 25 through 17. Thought that was fairly accurate, although the Missouri rankings a little bit questionable. But I feel like after that, the top 16, they're so inconsistent with their rankings, whether it's a quality win, quality loss, what's the name on your chest. It's just all over the place. That really bothers me.
The committee is something to behold. I'm not sure what exactly goes into the first few weeks of the decisions. It's actually would be interesting to be a part of those meetings just to be like, all right, well, this is a big brand. They'll build off this, or this could make us more money this way. Because I feel like the first couple of weeks, it still matters. It matters a ton as a baseline for the rest of the season. But it's like, really? Missouri? Would you have put them in later in the year? Probably not. Jake, any second day thoughts for you?
No, it was fun to get kind of fired up about last night. It was fun to kind of break down. At the end of the day, I know it's not good television. It's not really good podcasting, but it will play itself out. There's a lot of games even this weekend that we're going to cover. It will just play itself out. We're still going to have some gripes no matter what, because that's what happens, especially when you put 12 teams into a playoff. There's always going to be like those 2 or 3 lost teams that are just going to be, it's unavoidable how much it's going to be debated. Alabama, LSU specifically. I mean, one of those two could lose this weekend and people will still find out scenarios on how maybe they could get back into the playoffs. So the rest of it, I think it'll be good. And these games this weekend are kind of some elimination games. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to talk about.
For sure, especially in the SEC, which we will lead off there. But before we do, let's do a little housekeeping. Fan perspectives are out this week. Iowa, Iowa State, and Nebraska are all released as of today at 5 p.m. So give those a look, give those a listen this week. Also dropping on podcast, hopefully later. Obviously, JP's traveling, so give us some time on those. Also, check out our good friends at shopnorivals.com. Shout out No Rivals, premium collegiate headwear, unique designs. Shop there today and use the code PTFS at checkout for free shipping. It's not all college affiliated. Sometimes they have a hat that just says howdy on it. Wouldn't you see? JT rocking the No Rivals cap today. He used the code PTFS at checkout and didn't pay $1 for shipping. That is a fact. So shout out No Rivals, shopnorivals.com today. All right. With that, let's drop a like, hit the subscribe button. Let's go into the Week 11 previews. This one, let's lead it off in the SEC. Let's talk Georgia. Let's talk Ole Miss. This one has a lot of hype around it, as it does every year. Is this year for Lane Kiffin and his squad. Jake.
Yeah, one of the elimination games I just mentioned. At least it feels like that for the Ole Miss side. Although it could be a tough loss if Georgia finds a way to lose this one. Is this the biggest game in Lane Kiffin's career at Ole Miss? I'd have to go back and really dig into it. This one just, I mean, how much in the offseason, guys, did we cover this team? And you're like, they went all in on the portal. They spent all of this money. They retained Jackson Dart and Trey Harris and all of the talent. Like, this is what the 12-team playoff is made for. It's made for teams like Ole Miss. And now they have to defend that chance with Georgia coming to town. I think it's a perfect opportunity for them. It's going to be really interesting. Let's flip it to the other side. Carson Beck just quite simply has not been playing good. And that's quite frankly, it's an understatement. 11 picks in his last 5 games. It's probably accumulation of a lot of things. I think the talent is still there. And you hope for Georgia, he kind of figures it out because they're going to need him. Otherwise, it feels like this Georgia team has a lot more weaknesses when Carson Beck is not playing at his best like he has been. Georgia hasn't been able to consistently run the football either, which is, I think it's hurt Beck. It's he doesn't have a ton of stud wide receivers. He doesn't have Brock Bowers, doesn't have Ladd McConkey. A lot of his receivers got into some legal trouble this summer. And what he needed is Trevor Etienne and some of those running backs to pick up the slack, and they haven't. Ole Miss is the second-rated rush defense in all of college football. So basically what it's going to come down in Oxford on Saturday, at least from the Georgia side, is Carson Beck's going to have to play a lot better than he has these last few weeks.
Yeah, that's a good place to start. I almost want to mix the two programs here. Are we looking at Old State or Penn Miss? Because is this the exact same conversation we had a week ago with Ohio State and Penn State?
Yep.
I mean, Ole Miss is in a very similar spot. It feels like they've played this game so many times and they haven't been able to get over the hump of finally winning it. Let's look at what Ole Miss has done terribly in their losses. You go on the road and you get beat in a tough spot in LSU. So be it. In that game, you had 12 penalties. At home, you get beat by Kentucky. In that game, you had 9 penalties. So they got to limit the penalties this week. Play a clean football game to stay within. Jackson Dart hasn't been throwing a ton of picks. On the other side, Carson Beck's been throwing a ton. 3 last week in Georgia-Florida game, and then 11 on the season. It's his most heavy interception time in his career. Not a shock now that he's the lead guy there, but still, if Ole Miss can force him into those turnovers when they're forced to throw the ball against Ole Miss elite rush defense, that's when maybe things could spark up. But I'm still in kind of that similar mindset of, is this Ohio State, Penn State all over again? And we're hyping up Ole Miss. Is this finally the team? But nope, Kirby Smart's team is just going to be themselves. What do you think, JT?
Yeah, just like you said, I mean, this is the game that Ole Miss has been circling all off season, kind of the culmination of this whole roster that they've been built. But at the same time, do you really feel confident taking them against a Kirby Smart-led Georgia team? Even with all the mistakes that Carson Beck's made and the flaws that this Georgia team has had, I feel like when you're looking at this matchup, I feel like if I'm going to make a prediction, like I'm going to end up leaning towards Georgia because we haven't seen it from Ole Miss yet. I mean, I've also saw that I believe their running back's going to be out this week. Henry Parrish.
Yep, Parrish will be out as well. I think Trey Harris it doesn't sound like he's going to play at this point either.
Exactly. And if you're going to be one-dimensional, as good as the Ole Miss passing game is, I feel like that's going to be a tall task for them to overcome Georgia's defense, who we've seen in the Texas game just swallowed them up.
Yeah, that's a good place to be. I think I looked at the kind of the rankings behind it. The third ranked passing offense in college football, yards per game wise. And then Georgia's secondary is the 52nd best in the country in that same stat category. But the injuries, man, they're going to dwindle down this Ole Miss offense and the weapons that they can throw at just Georgia defense. And Kirby Smart's going to have his guys ready to play in a big game because they weren't early against Alabama and they almost came back and won this one. I think he'll have them more prepared for this spot this week in the Grove. Reese, any thoughts on this matchup before we go to score predictions?
Yeah, Parks, I think you hit the nail on the head. This is Ohio State, Penn State. This is Ohio State, Michigan, except for the last 3 years. It's just you want to go with the team who's like, oh, maybe this is their year. And it's just Georgia's won the last 2 games with Carson Beck throwing 3 interceptions in each of those games. That tells you just how good that defense is and how that team still is and how good that coaching staff is. So it's going to be hard for me to, even though it is in Oxford, it's hard for me to go with that team. I mean, Jackson Dart looked phenomenal last week. He tied the school record with 6 touchdowns. That Arkansas team looked atrocious. But again, you talk like JT just brought up those injuries, man. If you don't have your guys going up against the best defense you've probably seen this year, it's going to make it a lot harder for Jackson Dart to be that kind of a dude. So I'm just leaning Georgia in this spot because of it's just like I said, it's Ohio State, Penn State. It's just Penn State can't get it done in these games. I think I just looked it up. The last 11 of 12, Ole Miss has lost this football game. So give me the Dogs.
All right, there it is. The Dogs to kick off predictions wise. Any score in mind, Reese, to kick us off?
Let's go Georgia 31-23.
I like that. It's a good area. What do you think, JT? Down to the new guy.
Yeah. As much as I like this Ole Miss team, I like Jackson Dart. I like Lane Kiffin. I was really hoping this Ole Miss team would be able to make some noise in the playoff this year, just getting a new fresh face in there. But it's hard, even with all the mistakes that Georgia's made, it's hard for me to bet against a Kirby Smart-led team like I talked about before. I took them against Alabama, which they weren't able to pull that one off, but I took them against Texas, and I'm going to take them again in this spot. I feel like Georgia's going to end up being able to minimize some of their turnover mistakes that they've made, just being all that it's a big game. So I've got Georgia 31, Ole Miss 27.
All right, there it is. Jake, round us out before my beloved pick that everybody's waiting for.
I have a feeling I know where this is all going. Last week, Ohio State, Penn State, everybody zigged. I tried to zag going Penn State. Not gonna fool me twice. I will take Georgia in this situation. I have real money on Georgia already. I took it early just because I thought maybe it would get above a field goal and you'd play the hook. We'll have to wait and see there. But I don't want it to be mistaken. Like this Ole Miss defense, like this isn't a usual Lane Kiffin team. This is a good defense out of Ole Miss. And I think they can give Georgia some problems if they don't figure some things out. Also, we got to do shout out Jordan Watkins because he had an elite performance last week with like 275 yards. What did he have alone? He had like 4 of, I think, was it 5 of 6 for Jackson Dart's touchdowns. So with Trey Harris out, he could be big too. I won't be surprised if Ole Miss gets this done. I do think they have the talent, but I got to see it at this point, and I'm not going to do it 2 weeks in a row.
It skews me so hard on the injury side of things because Trey Harris is such a just monument weapon for this Ole Miss offense. One of the leading targets for good reason. He was dominant last year within this conference. But when I look at this game, I get the exact same feeling where I told you all the hype around Ole Miss's passing offense. And, you know, they have some guys dwindled down. But then on the other side, there lies Kirby Smart, the highest paid coach in college football for good reason, who's already had one knockback this year, unexpectedly, really, in the spot that they were in, especially now knowing what Alabama's like. Hell no, I'm not going to bed betting against Kirby Smart. Give me the Dogs on the road. It's almost replacing my Saban bets where it's like I can go to bed knowing I bet on Nick Saban and lost. Kirby Smart would almost be next in line for me for that reason. So give me the Dogs on the road. I think they can take care of business in the Grove and leave Ole Miss unhappy yet again. All right, that's the SEC game to kick us off. Let's go over to that Big Ten game. Let's talk Michigan, Indiana. This one, a little less hype around it, but we still need to mention it because the Hoosiers are in the top 10 of the college football playoff, and Signetti's group has just been dismantling teams over and over again. Besides Washington, really, every game has not been close. Jay, give us your thoughts on the Hoosiers in this matchup.
Yeah, I mean, we don't need to spend a ton of time on it, but I put it in the outline because I don't feel like we've covered Indiana much or if at all in any of our breakdown games this year. So at this point, I feel like the spotlight is going to continue to shine on Indiana. This is leading up to Ohio State in a couple of weeks. I mean, the big question for me, and I think for everybody else at this point, especially being a 14-point favorite, Indiana's covered every single game this year. The question is is the crew going to back Indiana this week, or where's the side going to lie? That's kind of why I wanted to run this down and get your guys' takes. But like, we knew that Michigan wasn't going to have a good offense this year, and we knew that they were lacking talent on that side of the ball, but we thought the defense would pick up the slack, right? I mean, they're 47th in total defense, and they've only forced 10 turnovers this year. Like, the defense is kind of underperformed, and I think that's held Michigan back a ton. I don't know, Parks, we can go back to you being the Big Ten guy. Is there anything where Michigan can maybe capitalize and even pull an upset this weekend?
Yeah, Michigan's run offense is obviously better than Nebraska's have been consistently throughout the year. However, they're so one-dimensional that it's almost like you can load the box and make it so tough on them. And the way Indiana's offense controls the game, and as explosive as they are, with Will Johnson out, you got to think the Hoosiers can score some more points, like do another Signetti week. Yeah. Elijah Surratt on the edge for them has been so good this year. I think the more shocking matchup for me is I think Indiana's offense is going to put up 30, 35 points on a Michigan defense who's still good, who has more returners than the offensive side of the ball. But really, I don't know. It's hard to say because Nebraska's offense was so different against Indiana's defense, but Michigan's game is so much better. I just don't know if Donovan Edwards can carry the full load to beat a top 10 team on the road. JT, any thoughts on this matchup, Michigan-wise?
Yeah, I mean, for me, before I go into any rants or anything like that, I would like to say I was a big supporter of Michigan last year, and I was happy to see them actually win it all. But they've been one of those teams this year that I've just kind of had a vendetta against just because they only get talked about, and this matchup's only getting talked about because of that Michigan name. I mean, Halloween passed us by last week,
100%.
But this team is still going full-blown pumpkin mode. I mean, they're ranking in the hundreds nationally offensively. They just don't really bring much to the table, and I know we were kind of depending on them having a good defense this year, but I don't think their offense is putting them in good enough spots. And if Indiana's got their quarterback Curtis Rourke healthy this week, I don't really think it's going to be close.
Yeah, that's a good mention. I wasn't going to say anything because I didn't want to be incorrect, but is he listed as still questionable, or do they think he's going to play?
I think he's listed to play, but I feel it's just kind of tough whenever a guy's coming off an injury. You're never too sure.
Yeah, that offense is set up so well for him in his game. I mean, he's 6'6". I mean, he's a bigger quarterback than most, I would say, out there. But it's just so quick. It doesn't really give the defensive line a presence throughout the game just because of how it schemes. They're going to run RPO 95% of the time. How does Michigan answer the bell without one of their best guys on the edge? I don't know. So you got to think if Rourke's back, I really do think Indiana covers this number and rolls. Reese, any thoughts on this matchup for you?
Yeah, you talk about how, I mean, this Michigan team, their offense, it reminds me like of an Iowa team, except this defense is nowhere near what Iowa was. Their offense is so one-dimensional, and that defense, you talk about Will Johnson being gone, that's a huge loss for that defense. And like how Indiana's been this year, they were down 10 to Michigan State last week. Like, oh, is this different? And they rattled off whatever it was, 45 straight. So Michigan, if they're able to get a lead, you got to be able to chip away a clock. You got to force turnovers, which Indiana has just not done this year that much. They've been smart with the football. Signetti's really got this offense going well. I just don't see Michigan having enough firepower to keep themselves in this kind of a football game. If it is, it's going to be one of those ugly Big Ten ones where it's just smash mouth. Let's run the ball. They got to be like an Army style thing where it's like, if you have the ball, you got to eat up 6, 7, 8 minutes of clock if you're going to have it. You can't just go 3 and out to give Indiana multiple chances to score the football.
Okay. I want to start off, before we go to score predictions, I want to spark a question and see if maybe I'm on a lone island. I've obviously had my team get their ass beat by Indiana, so maybe that factors into my thoughts, but I'm kind of getting – I might hate Signetti more than I hate Deion Sanders, and Colorado's our rival. I don't know. It's on the verge of
he's right about everything.
You say right about everything, but it's like there's no humbleness at all. Like, I get it. You're a winner and you've been in the winner in the past. That's fantastic. At James Madison, it's great. You're off to a great start at Indiana. but is it verging more on the like it's pompous rather than like it's more than cocky. I don't know.
But if
There's
he
something
was your
about it.
coach, you
Am I
would
far
love
off
it.
on
If
this?
he was your
I was
coach, you
gonna
would love
say
it.
Well, no shit.
he's
If I was
Exactly.
9-0,
he's 9-0. They've kicked the shit
You
out of
love it.
everybody. And also, to his
before they were
credit,
9-0, he was talking the same way.
Google.
Doesn't Indiana football need that? Like, maybe he would
That's what I was
talk
gonna
back
say.
if he were at
They were
Michigan.
brothers.
Maybe he wouldn't be as crazy about like trying to just get their name on the map. But like, he's at Indiana, man. Like, I think Indiana needs all of the cockiness you can get. I mean, yeah, you could say the same for Dion. And honestly, it's been more enjoyable this year with Dion. You know why? Because he's producing wins. So if you can back it up, I mean, I will not stop you.
Dion
lack
was
of-
like that last year and they were bad, but he's
Yeah.
honestly less like it this year. Like less than he was when he first got there, I would say.
He got a little humbled.
Yeah. Oh God, yeah.
Dion did.
Which
And I
I
mean-
just think Signetti needs that. I think maybe Ohio State will be that call. JT.
Yeah, in the example of Coach Sig, I mean, the lack of humility is a little off-putting, but I feel like at Indiana, just like Jake said, you almost need that because even when they are 9-0 and have covered in every single game, they're still not getting respect. And you've got to get those guys up. You can't take any games off when you're Indiana. No one's going to give you respect. I mean, they're number 9 in the country at 9-0 in the Big Ten. So I kind of feel like it kind of plays into the part. You kind of got to be like that, especially in year 1 for him.
All right. That's the answer I needed. It's because they beat my team's ass silly. That was why I was having those thoughts. I just wasn't sure if maybe anybody else was thinking it, so I had to double check. But let's go roundtable style score predictions. JT, you kick us off. Who wins? Who covers? What do you got score prediction wise?
I've got Indiana winning and covering 28-13. Not a whole lot more to put into this. I just think they're playing a lot better ball than Michigan right now. Being at home, it's another big spot for Indiana, and I think they're going to show up.
If Rourke plays, I'm right there with you. But I'm going to go 38-13. I think this Indiana offense is for real. They can run the ball. I'm really impressed with Justice Ellison throughout the entire season. So I think they roll at home in this spot. Jake.
Yeah, I know power ratings has nothing to do with logos, colors, all that good stuff, but doesn't it feel like Michigan's getting more credit on the line, like just because they're Michigan? Like,
Yes.
had this been Purdue at 5-4, I know it's all computers and math, but I feel like the money would come up for Indiana to be like a 17-point favorite at this point. I mean, we just talked about it, right? Sig went into that basketball game in February and said, "Hey, we're going after Michigan. We're going after Ohio State. We don't care." And I think he is going to run it up on Saturday like he kind of has been, and I think he does know what the number is to cover. There's no reason.
They know. I've heard
I
from
don't know.
inside Division I sources, as I'm sure you've had. Everybody knows what the line is.
I think like
Well,
how
the
does
cover
I don't know,
play.
Indiana's defense has been good this year too. Like I don't know how Michigan gets to 14 points, 17 points. So
I would say that's not dumb.
it's a clear cover for me. It's Indiana.
All right. All Indiana so far. Reese, are you going to be on the other side or are you joining us?
I'll be nice for you guys. I'll take Indiana's going to win, but I'll take Michigan to cover. I don't like it, but how about we're going to get
Lord
pushed?
knows what
We're gonna
JP
get-
will do.
We're going to get 28-14. We're going to get a push.
It's a big number. I don't think that's crazy.
No, it's not. It's not. It's definitely not because Michigan's offense is so one-dimensional, but the one dimension that they have slows the game down. So that's where they could be successful in covering the number at least. But too much offensive firepower and Indiana rolls in my mind. That is a mostly unanimous, besides Reese's decision on the Hoosiers.
Welcome.
Let's move it down the line. Let's go back to the SEC. Let's head to Death Valley. This one, got to call for overtime, right? Looking at the history of the game, it's always brought memories, highlights that you see later in the season, at the end of the year. You go back on and watch these games. Let's talk Alabama. Let's talk LSU. This one's a night game in Baton Rouge, so it's going to be a good one. Why don't you break this one down first for us, JT?
Yeah, I had a really tough time looking at this one, trying to predict a winner in something like this. This is a big game for both teams, obviously. This is kind of one of those first big SEC elimination games, although with teams with the biggest brands as Bama and LSU, you never know. They could slide in with three losses, depending on how this game shakes out. both of these teams really showing flaws. I mean, Bama's showing a lot more flaws than we expected at this point. Big key for them is if they can get the run game going. LSU also looking to get the run game going a little bit. They've been leaning on Nussmeier a lot more, I think, than they would like to. But being in Death Valley, not a lot of teams going in there and winning in night games.
Yeah, I think that's my initial thought too, because I got a chance to go back and read a couple articles on this matchup. And the first article was like, hey, let's take a look at this just on the analytics side of things. And it was like, oh, our computer and our power ratings punched out that Alabama's going to win by a touchdown. So that's a cover. And it was 70% of the schemes or whatever they call them that they run to get those computer results all came out as Alabama. All right, we're talking about Death Valley at night when 2 years ago a worse LSU team came in here and won this game in overtime. So is this Alabama team really much better than the one that they beat then? So why would Nussmeier not be able to throw for 300 yards and take advantage of a secondary that is a little bit down from last year in Alabama? So that was kind of my first thought too, is just I think being at home in this spot in the toughest stadium to play in at night, in my opinion, benefits LSU a ton. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, I'm right there with you. And JT highlighted it too. Like, whichever team has more success running the football, I think wins this game. And I think you guys can go back and check. That's exactly what we said about the A&M LSU game again. And for some reason, I mean, I don't understand why LSU just completely abandoned the run in the second half of that A&M game. They were just pressing. I think we highlighted it, Parks. They were playing like they were down 21 when they were only down 7 or 14 or what it is at that point. So if Alabama just comes out and punches you in the mouth right away, really interested to see how Brian Kelly and how that offense kind of handles the situation. Are they going to press and start to throw the ball a ton again? Or they relax, rely on the run? And on the other side, Alabama, I want to see Milroe use his legs more, like more designed runs. I think that's when he's at his best, like he did against Georgia. He was so elite running the football. I think that's the recipe for success if Alabama wants to get this done on the road. But the offense for Alabama and what Milroe's been doing in the passing attack right now it's quite alarming for a night game like this.
After the losses, people kind of started to write off Milroe from that Heisman conversation. I don't think they remember, because of the recency bias, how capable he is of just leading this team into this big time matchup and taking it over and making it a ball game and maybe coming out with a win if you're Alabama. However, he has been a little stagnant as of late. Throwing the football, he's been more inconsistent like he was at the beginning of last season. So him throwing the ball consistently down the field and connecting, maybe not targeting Ryan Williams as much, 18 targets a game is insane. He's right around 16 and a half targets a game, I think. You got to spread it out a little bit, Milroe, especially against a defense who knows what you want to do in a tough spot, in a tough environment. Reese, thoughts on this matchup?
Yeah, what a chance for Blake Baker, to have his first kind of one of his bigger games. I mean, Ole Miss was a big game too, but this is kind of what you could stamp yourself on if you win this football game at home, having Death Valley on your side too. But we want to talk about the offenses, like being able to run the football. If you can't run the football, you got to look at also who's protecting their quarterback. Well, LSU's only given up 4 sacks on the year. Alabama's given up 16. So, if you're going to let a guy stand around, that's also because Milroe is a lot more mobile, so he has a lot more time back there, so he gets more sacks. But that Bama line has not been as effective protecting him. You lean Alabama with all the weapons they have. You have Ryan Williams, you have Jam Miller, Justice Haynes, and Milroe with all that. They got the weapons, but if Garrett Nussmeier can stay upright, you give him enough time to make reads. Yes, Alabama's defense is phenomenal, but this guy's got 20 touchdowns on the year, 9 interceptions. Just got to find a way to not make inadvertent throws. They haven't ran the ball as great. Caden Durham, their top back, has only got like 400 yards on the year rushing so far, but he also catches the ball very well in the backfield. He's got 14 receptions as well for about 250 yards, I think I just saw. So it's a tough spot, but Death Valley, we talk about all the time, but it's different. It's nighttime there. Like, it's going to get weird there. I think the thing you talk about in this game is turnovers. Who wins a turnover battle and gives their team multiple opportunities is going to win this football game. I think it just comes down to that.
All right. That is a recipe for success. Jake, who has the edge in this one in your mind? Who wins? Who covers? What's the score?
Yeah, Parks, you highlighted the game a couple of years ago with Daniels and that good Alabama team and how much of a track like track race it was. I mean, it was just high flying up and down the field. I don't see that happening this weekend. I think it's going to be a little uglier. And Alabama, I look into their last game on the road in a hostile environment at Tennessee, and they just struggled offensively. Now, Tennessee's got a better defense than LSU does, but at the same time, I will take until Nussmeier bites me in the ass again. I'm going to take LSU. Going to take him at home. I don't think Alabama is the same offensively in communicating and everything with Milroe when they're on the road at these huge environments.
Put me on the Tigers as well. I just think the way Milroe's been playing as of late, going into an environment like this, it's kind of just doesn't mix well. It doesn't sit well in my mind. So I really like LSU to cover the number, win the game outright. Probably a lower scoring. I think it's going to be ugly as well. Probably that lower scoring 24-17, 24-21, something like that. But LSU gets a massive win, probably their biggest win in the Brian Kelly era in my mind. What do you think, JT?
Yeah, I mean, this is probably my least confident pick of the week. You hate to pick any team that's going into Death Valley in a night game. I picked LSU earlier in the year against Ole Miss, but honestly, I'm still not sold on this LSU defense. And after watching them play Texas A&M and having to handle a running quarterback like that, I just can't believe that Jalen Milroe and this Alabama offense, who looked so good at the beginning of the year, is going to continue to struggle and try to force the ball downfield through the air like they have the last couple of weeks. I think this could be a spot where they start to get the run game going a little more. They come out early. They're a little more attuned to it. Like you said, Jake, they played at Tennessee earlier in the year, so they're a little more prepared this time. And I just don't think Kalen DeBoer is going to drop a big game like this. I still have a lot of trust in that guy. And although I don't love it, I do think Bama's going to win 31-27.
All right. So there's a Bama pick. You join in JT, or are you on the side of the good guys, Reese?
You make so many good points, JT, but also I was with you too. I took LSU and Ole Miss came into town that was 3.5, and they come win that football game. I just don't know. This is a great football game. This is an elimination game for the SEC. I don't like picking Brian Kelly in this spot. I'd feel much better picking Kalen DeBoer, but I'm going to lean with Death Valley in this spot. I'm going to take the Tigers. I'm going to take them to win this game. Parks, I'm going the opposite of you. It's Death Valley at nighttime. It's going to get weird. Tigers are going to win 44-41. We're going.
All right.
That would be
another track meet.
Football game.
All right. Another track meet in this long-standing, interesting, overtime-ridden matchup. What was that, Jake? You have a comment for the group? Talking shit?
Yeah, you said track meet. I was like, I said track race. I was like, track meet sounds better. That was the word I was looking for.
We let it roll. We didn't even.
We're only human, dude.
Interrupt the professional.
It's our
sound
show.
as
We can
bad.
trademark it.
I appreciate that.
It's still not as bad as the mediocre being really bad in JP's mind. Shout out JP.
JP not knowing what mediocre is.
Yeah,
the definition of mediocre.
Shout out JP. We're thinking about you. You're still part of the show. But all right, let's take a mid-preview break. After we wrap that one up, let's talk shopnorivals.com, premium collegiate headwear. JT's got a beautiful one on his head. If you drop a score prediction for any of the 5 games that we preview tonight and you hit it on the nose, we'll send you a free cap from our partner over at No Rivals. Shop No Rivals, pick one out, drop a score prediction when you hit it exactly on the nose. Not a point off, not 2 points off. There's no leeway in life. There's no leeway in the Play the Fights on College Football show. If you hit it on the nose, we'll send you a free cap from our friends at No Rivals. Shop No Rivals today. With that, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button as we go into the Big 12. Let's talk Big 12 football with our Big 12 crew here. Let's lead it off in Lubbock, Texas Tech, Colorado. I believe Texas Tech is coming off a good win. What did they do well in that win, Jake? Break this one down for us.
I'd argue they didn't do a lot of things well. They kind of gave up the game for Iowa State to
They
take,
beat
and the
a
other
top
team
11 team on the road, Jake.
The other team just didn't. They had too many mistakes themselves. All right, what they did well. This team can throw the football. I think if there's one thing we know about this team, it's number one, they're going to have a good passing attack. They have good receivers. Josh Kelly, I look for him to be another guy who can get a ton of yards on this secondary. We'll see how he does against this Colorado secondary, who's been playing actually really well recently. And then in the backfield, everybody knows about Texas Tech and Taj Brooks. Like, he's going to be the man who's going to have to earn his yards. He didn't really play that well in the first 3 quarters of the Iowa State game, but was just monumental in that last drive versus Iowa State. So he's rushed for over 100 yards every single game this year. Let's see if he gets there. Let's flip it to the other side. There's not much more you need to say about Colorado's offense. Everybody knows about it. Shedeur Sanders, LeJontay Wester, Travis Hunter, Will Shepherd. I mean, the list goes on and on with those receivers. And they're going against a passing defense in Texas Tech, which somehow looked kind of impressive versus Iowa State last week, but is still statistically probably the worst passing defense in this league outside of maybe Oklahoma State. Huge opportunity for Colorado on the road. Dion and McGuire are like they're boys. They're like best friends or something. I don't know, but it'll be interesting. And it's this one's a good spotlight for the Big 12. I'm excited to watch it.
Nonetheless, I think my first thought of I'm trying to think of this season and what Colorado's done to teams that I thought they would get beat by. I look back at the UCF game. Obviously, we had a much different opinion of UCF at the time, but it's kind of a similar atmosphere in my mind that they're rolling into. I think the rush defense for Colorado has taken such a step forward this year. And it's just been better overall on the defensive side of things, which has kept them in games because last year they got into a couple of track meets and they just couldn't outlast people. But Shedeur Sanders, one of the better quarterbacks, if not the best in the conference, when it only comes quarterbacks, not shot at Rocco Beck there. Sorry, Iowa State crew, don't come for me, but still elite quarterback. If he can spread it around better in better weather than what they got last week, Rocco Beck trying to throw the ball in the rain all game, then I think Colorado's offense can get rolling. Will Shepherd's been good on the outside. Jimmy Horn's been making an impact, not as of late, but he can step up and do so. But I kind of like Colorado in this spot just because they've been road tested. They played in tough environments this year. They've been better throughout the season. They progress rather than regress like they did last year. And so I kind of like the Buffs in this spot. What do you think, JT? You're the Big 12 guy on the other side as well.
Yeah, seeing the arc of Colorado over these last 2 years under Dion has been really interesting for me to just kind of follow along. I've been a supporter of them along the way. I mean, I took their over and wins the last 2 years, and both of those actually cashed before November. Slight flex there. But this is the first time we've seen this the Dion Colorado experience in a like actual meaningful November game. So and having to go on the road at Texas Tech, who's coming off their biggest win in the last couple of years, it seems like it'll be a very interesting test to see how that holds up. But I feel like their play styles actually match up really well for Colorado. I could see these teams both wanting to air it out and get into a shootout. And if that's the case, it's really hard to bet against the two NFL prospects in Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter.
I'm also interested to see if Colorado can get the run game going a little bit. They haven't done it all year, just averaging over 2 yards a carry, one of the worst in the country. I believe it's in the 120s in rank. Texas Tech doesn't give up a ton in that area, but has struggled in the past. So maybe they get it going a little bit more and it adds another dimension to that offense that Texas Tech may struggle with. What do you think, Reese, on this matchup?
I don't know what the overs for this game would take it. I think these offenses are going to have a lot of fun today. I don't see these defenses showing up and doing a whole lot. Colorado's giving up 155 yards a game on the ground. You talk about Taj Brooks is averaging 100 a game. He is going to have a good day. Baron Morton, we saw him last week. He was confident back there. 19 touchdowns, 5 interceptions. Guy knows what he's doing. I think it's one of these trap spots, though, where it's you look at, Texas Tech had their big win, and it's like, oh, they're going to keep it going. You get them at home. But I don't know. There's something about Colorado. I see that offense is going to have a little bit too much for them. I'm not saying the defense is going to be phenomenal. This defense also it's penalized a lot. They average 17 penalty yards a game. They have about 8 penalties a game, which is remarkable, I feel like. So I think that's going to come into play too. But I'm going to lean Colorado in this spot. I know the hook might come in and be a little nasty, but I just think offenses are going to have a lot of fun. It's going to be a good game to have on if you want points.
All right. I like that breakdown. I think, Jake, you mentioned his name, but Josh Kelly last week kind of had a day against an Iowa State secondary. That's got to be the expected matchup for Travis Hunter this week, who had a bye, kind of let his body rest. So that's going to be one to watch for sure. But kick us off roundtable style, Jake. I know we're going to a little bit of a spoiler to the Big 12 show here, but what do you think? Who wins? Colorado, Texas Tech, who covers?
Yeah, I mean, I was really impressed, before the bye week. Colorado's win at home versus Cincinnati is really when I kind of turned my head for Colorado and how good this team could be. They have to win out. These November games are going to be really important. I also think Texas Tech is still coming off of a massive win, like a hangover spot. I think Colorado gets this one done on the road. I don't even think it's that. It'll never feel that close. Now, they'll probably win by maybe 7 or 10 because that's the Big 12, but I don't think it'll ever feel as close as what the score really resembles on Saturday.
I think when you look back at that Iowa State game, Iowa State got the lead right before the half. They kind of broke down defensively, Texas Tech that is, gave up that score to go down 13-10 going into the half. It just was weird. Iowa State could just never separate. I think Colorado is going to separate in the hangover spot, Jake. I like them to cover the number and win on the road. They're playing for more. I know Texas Tech obviously is coming off a big win, but they're just trying to play spoiler at this point with the last part of their schedule. I don't think they can do it back-to-back weeks, so I like the Buffs on the road, and that hurts. You see these helmets back here? That hurts to say, but I picked them multiple times this year. They're an improved football team for sure. JT.
Yeah, for me, the Big 12 is too competitive and too closely rated for me to feel confident picking a road team as a favorite. I mean, you hate to bet against the home team as a dog in a situation like this, especially with Taj Brooks. I mean, he's been prolific this year. I mean, and that's definitely a way of success for Texas Tech to be able to control the game at home. But sneakily, I think Colorado's rush defense is a lot better than people expect. And it's hard for me to not see Colorado having success spreading this Texas Tech offense out. I don't want to sound like a bitter Iowa State fan, but I feel like last week's game was a lot more about how the shortcomings of Iowa State and not as much about how Texas Tech took advantage of Iowa State. And I feel like you touched on, Parks, I think Colorado is going to have a lot of success in that area. So I've got Colorado 35 and Texas Tech 31.
All right, so close game in Lubbock there. Reese, round us out. We going unanimous Buffs here.
Yeah, here we go. Let's put it on the board. But yeah, I'm going Colorado
Here we
go 37-30.
All right, my rivals screaming, the little nagging fan voice in the back of my head's like, hell yeah, fine. It's a win-win. Either I win the pick or Texas Tech beats them.
Everyone picking against a home underdog in the Big 12 is probably not a good sign for success.
Coming off a top 11 win, yeah, no, it's a terrible recipe.
Hangover spot.
Yeah, we've hyped, Jake and I have hyped up Texas Tech, and I think JP was a part of it, at least last year, going into the preseason with all the talent that they've had. Shuck goes down last year. They finished the season in a horrible fashion, but it's a talented roster. McGuire always has that, but he also coached like shit last week. Nobody's talked about that. Mm-hmm. Maybe you guys did on the Iowa State show, but them coming out and throwing the ball 3 times at 2 minutes in the fourth quarter, that's the stuff that is going to lose them games come down the road. I think they just got lucky last week. So that is the breakdown for Colorado and Texas Tech. Hit the subscribe button, hit the like button if you're viewing this one on YouTube in the clips form. We appreciate you being here. All right, let's go to the other spot in the Big 12. Let's talk the Holy War, which has not been played since 2021. Let's talk BYU. Let's talk Utah. This one is going to be a ton of fun because BYU is in the top 10 of the college football playoff. Utah, the preseason Big 12 favorite to win the conference. Obviously, things have fallen apart. There's been a lot of talking smack in the media this week. Jake, break this Big 12 one down for us.
I see this going a couple of ways. One, I can see how does Utah score even 10 points on Saturday. On the other side, this one is Utah has nothing to lose. And if they can play spoiler at home to BYU's perfect season, I mean, they're going to be up for the task. So it's not a matter of, I don't think this team's going to be ready to go. It's just a matter of maybe like who's playing quarterback for him at this point. They said Whittingham said that Brandon Rose
rising.
I mean, rising says the Brandon Rose kid has a shot to start. Will we see Isaac Wilson? I don't know, but either way, it's going to start with Micah Bernard, the running back. He's going to have to be special. He's going to have 150 yards. Feels like he hasn't had that in a couple of weeks. And on the other side, BYU just needs to continue to turn teams over. If BYU can create a couple of turnovers on the road against this poor Utah offense, it could be a rout. But this is the Big 12. It's November. It's add on top of it a very underrated rivalry in college football. So anything can happen, I feel like, at this point.
This one is going to be a ton of fun. What are your thoughts on this matchup, Reese?
Where's this game being played?
Yeah.
Historic
Rice
Rice
Well,
Rice
well,
Eccles.
Rice
well, at the
Eccles?
Utes.
Why would I ever pick against them this late in the year? You're going to talk about BYU team who it's their best season in how long? Why wouldn't it get held by your in-state rival? Utah in this spot. This is one where I don't really. Yeah, your quarterback's a big. Isaac Wilson hasn't been the greatest. He's 8 touchdowns, 8 turnovers. We talk about Michael Bernard is the biggest guy, dude. Like if they can run the football and they can get Wilson a little bit more free space to throw the football, I think the defense too for Utah is going to be the biggest factor here too. If you're going to get BYU uncomfortable, force them to turn the ball over a couple of times, get some 3 and outs, and just let the crowd become a part of this game. Rice Eccles, stuff gets weird when the sun goes down over there, so I'm not going to go away and pick away from this team. So give me BYU in this spot. Or, I mean, Utah in the spot, sorry.
I was going to say that little Pat McAfee in there. JP comes in with the comment, does this scream Utah blowout out of nowhere? Yes, because it's a night game in a spot where everybody's kind of written them off. And I feel like the country, though, and especially Vegas, is kind of given BYU the back seat the entire season. They've had them as an underdog twice as an undefeated team. Now they're emerging as the Big 12 favorite to be in the college football playoff. And all of a sudden the narratives change. I think when I look at this matchup, I just look at the offenses and there's so many question marks on the Utah side of things, especially at the quarterback position. And there's not really that many question marks. Obviously, you're a little banged up, but BYU for their offense, they're averaging 34 points a game. On the other side, you have a Utah team that's averaging 19 points a game, which ranks 125th out of 134 teams. BYU, you're not asking a ton from that defensive unit to get the stops. You just got to limit the big plays, the weird stuff that happens at 9:15 Central in Rice Eccles Stadium, and they should come out with this as a win. This is a bad Utah team, man. It's almost like this is a spot where I'm going to say all that, and then all of a sudden my breakdown is going to be farewell tour because their head coach has talked all year about how he doesn't know how long he's going to be there. Let me just round this out with a top 10 victory in a season that kind of went to shit on us. So there's both sides of the table flipping for me, but I cannot bet against BYU because they've just proved me wrong all year and proved me right in some spots too, betting on them as an underdog. And I really like them as a favorite in this spot on the road too, because Utah's a bad football team. Nothing about them has impressed me over the last few weeks. Oklahoma State being their best win on the road. How's that turning out? It's not good. That team's not good. What do you think, JT?
Yeah, looking at this game, how refreshing is it in this time of college football with all the rivalries that we're losing to see a rivalry come back in this new Big 12? I feel like this is just a really good spot for these two teams and the conference and college football as a whole. It may not be the prettiest game out there, but I feel like it's going to end up being a really entertaining one. I know we've talked about how bad Utah's offense has been all year, but I just don't see them not showing up in this spot, a night game at home against your rival. And sometimes when you bring in a backup quarterback like that, bring in a little unknown, maybe you'll get a little extra out of him that you wouldn't usually expect. So I've got Utah covering in this game, but I still have BYU winning. I just think BYU is a really good football team this year that's been a little undervalued. So it's hard for me to go all the way against them with how much I've been talking them up recently. So I've got BYU in this one, 21-18.
All right, low scoring game, so that's a credit to both defenses, I guess. Maybe not as much BYU because of how bad Utah has been on offense, but it's not a crazy pick. I feel like the country's kind of been waiting around for BYU to get that loss. There's not a ton of college football, undefeated teams in college football out there, but people have just been waiting around, waiting for that game that you can kind of start to write off BYU. You're like, oh, yep, there it is. That's kind of what we thought. This was a team. Where were they picked in the preseason, boys, in the Big 12? It was one of the last two.
BYU's last.
Yeah.
Dead last. And here we are talking about the top 10 team.
Outside of Houston. Maybe they're second last.
I heard a little gambling chirp down there, but did you take their under, Jake?
Who? BYU's under?
You take their under?
I didn't take it. I wouldn't have surprised me if I
think that was a mention. I think when we talked about one of the episodes, I think you talked about that one.
I think you're right. I think I did.
Because it was low. It was like 4.5, wasn't it? It was low.
Yep.
You don't think Albert Einstein ever got a problem wrong? Just sometimes it happens, man. I
don't know if Albert Einstein's gotten 20 problems.
I took
wrong.
UCF's over too. That's probably not in.
If this game wasn't at Utah in a night game, what do you guys think the spread would be? I know they usually bake in like 3 points for the spread, but I feel like it's gotta be worth way more than that. Like these two played on a neutral field. It's gotta be like -8, right?
6.5.
Yeah, on a neutral or
6.
at
let's just say it's a neutral.
If it's a neutral,
site,
yeah,
I'm saying
I'd-
7.5.
These
I'd probably
teams
put
could
it at-
not look any more different, but you get into like a weird rivalry spot like this. You never know what's going to happen. And that's the beauty of college football. That's why I
Icicles,
love that these
baby.
rivalries are back.
That's a
Yep.
credit to Utah's fan base because they're going to show up even though they're having a down year from what they were supposed to do. They're going to show up for this one, and it's the holy war, for Christ's sake. You got to be up and ready for it. I don't know if those two things can go together, so apologies if I offended anybody, but let's go roundtable style. JT already gave his pick. He's got Utah to cover, BYU to win. Jake,
Yes,
what do you think?
The top 3 Big 12 teams playing this weekend are all road teams and favored by just 3 points. That being said, I can't give Colorado on the road, and I can't take both favorites. I just can't. I'm going to take Utah. I'll take Utah to win. I mean, if you're a BYU fan, you're glad that I'm picking against you because I've bet against pretty much wrongly all season long. I still don't know how Utah is going to score, and I'm probably going to look like an idiot, but it feels like everything is catching up to most of the top teams in the Big 12. You look at Kansas State and Iowa State last week. This feels like a spot where Utah, after the bye, can get BYU.
Whatever the power up is in college football 25, when a player is really good on the road, I think it's called road dog. Put that on me this week because I got a lot of the road teams. Give me the Cougars on the road. Utah's not going to score, man. They've done nothing against teams that have told me otherwise. And if they beat me this week, so be it. But I'm not betting against the top 10 Cougars again. I'm going to keep riding with them instead of betting against them. I'm not going to do that. That was the 2020 coastal move that I pulled. Shout out to the It's Just Money podcast, RIP. But I pulled that move in 2020. It bit me in the ass. I learned from my mistakes. Not again. Give me the Cougars on the road to win and cover Reese.
Shay, if you're not worried about how they're going to score touchdowns offensively, I'm smelling a special teams and a defensive touchdown. BYU is going to win this football game. They're going to get one offensive touchdown. BYU is going to win this football game 24-20. I mean, Utah's going to win this football game. Sorry, I keep saying BYU.
That's the second time you've done that. So it's a little bit of your conscience coming out telling you that it's the Cougars.
Me and Reese taking Utah in this game is like dancing in Highsmith, being like, aim for the bushes.
Yeah. I wonder if JP's out there. JP, if you're out there, let us know who you're going to pick. Because I think JP would be on Utah on this spot, just out of a gut feeling. He's been there. He gets a little bit of de facto fandom to the places he's visited, as he should. But I'm wondering who he's going to pick in this one. Check out the ATS board if he doesn't drop a comment right now. But all right, that is all the 5 games we wanted to preview in depth for this week. Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Just a friendly, short reminder there. We appreciate you being here, but now's the time we get to open the floor. Interesting games, interesting lines from the weekend. Jake started this last week, so I'm going to let him start it again this week. Jake, tell us some matchups that you're interested in that maybe we didn't preview in depth tonight.
Yeah, let's start first. Couple of underrated, maybe a little bit of disgusting SEC games. South Carolina at Vandy it's an awesome one. Vandy's they're already bowl eligible. Some would say, what do they have to play for? Maybe a top 25 spot. I think the winner of this game cracks the top 25, even in the college football playoff rankings next week. And then the other one, Missouri at Oklahoma, or I think Oklahoma at Missouri. Sorry.
Yeah, Missouri's home.
Missouri, underdog at home. Your 24th ranked Missouri Tigers are an underdog to Oklahoma, who I'm not sure are they still walking out the walk-ons at receiver. I did see they're pretty. I think Farouk might play. I even saw maybe Burks might be back. So maybe the line's where it's in a good spot. Maybe Oklahoma turns this around, an old Big 12 matchup. Those are my first 2 games I thought were interesting.
I think one for me is one that we kind of got to preview in depth on JP's side of things, but Iowa UCLA is kind of a must watch for me just to see if UCLA can keep it rolling because they've won back-to-back games at Rutgers and then in Memorial Stadium last week against Nebraska. Now they get to host Iowa, who has been dismantling teams the last couple of weeks, especially when they made the quarterback change to Brendan Sullivan. They've looked so much better on offense and more productive. So it's kind of going to be the battle between if Iowa's defense can step up yet again, even though they've taken a step back when you look at it this season. So that's a must watch for me. I think that's must-see TV, and the line's 6 in favor of Iowa on the road. So if you're betting underdogs, I think UCLA might be a hot team that you can pick up on, but we'll see if Iowa's for real or if Wisconsin's worse than we thought. JT, any games that stick out to you that we didn't break down?
Yeah, the big one for me was South Carolina Vanderbilt. That line really stood out just because Vanderbilt's a 3.5-point dog at home. I know South Carolina's coming off the big night win against A&M last week, and Vanderbilt's not the toughest place to play. But I mean, Vanderbilt's been putting some good games together. And their only loss right now is a 3-point loss at home to Texas. And I just feel like they're being a little disrespected with that number. There's another game that I want to touch on, but I don't want to steal anybody else's thunder in here. So Reese, you can go ahead too.
Well, the only one that I was going to talk about would be the Georgia Tech Miami one. You talk about Miami, who they've played well all year, but I mean, that Duke game, yeah, they covered at the end, but that Duke was beating them going into half, I believe. Like, they were playing extremely well. So
is Hayden King still out though?
That's what I thought. That's what I was looking at
so.
too. Like, this is the part where I think about with Parksy, because this is your de facto team. But Georgia Tech, Brent Key, like, they play these top 10 teams tough, and you're giving them 10.5, and you get Miami at home too. Like, Cam Ward slip up game, maybe we're gonna see old Cam Ward.
Let the people know. Let the people know that Brent Key is the ranked team assassin. Now, however, he needs a quarterback though.
Yeah, it's probably
Reese, the listeners got to hear about our Syracuse segment.
That's what I was alluding to. Are we going to talk about how Syracuse is a dog at 4-4 Boston College?
Doubt us. That's all we need. We get fired up. Frank Brown and company. I mean, you look at the games we've lost. It's pretty obvious what we can and can't do. When you're going to make Kyle McCord throw the ball 60 times a game, he's going to have slip-up games. The Pitt game is, I don't know how that happens. Like, you throw 4 interceptions and 3 go back for 6. Like, that's just something came down and just, like, in the last interception the kid got from Pitt, he was literally facing the other direction and it fell in his hands. Like, that's just something you can't even draw up. So, Boston College, you're a well-coached football team. Bill O'Brien over there, he's got those guys in the right direction. I don't know how you get him to be a dog. Like, you're going on the road to Boston College, but, like, that's not that intimidating of a place to play. I think with all the weapons you have offensively, as long as Chestnut, you can get Marlo Wax to play. Marlo Wax was the ACC Player of the Week last week. The guy had 2 huge strip sacks going against Virginia Tech as well too, and that's a hell of a win they got in overtime. So defensively, you just got to figure that out. I think that's the reason why there might be a dog in that spot is defensively they might have question marks.
And I hate to bring it up, Reese, but on the preseason pods, when you guys were talking up Syracuse, you did swing me. I did take Syracuse over 7.5 wins with you this year. But looking at the schedule, this is a big one for the Orange. We got to win this week. We've got
this is huge
at Boston College. We got to travel the entire length of the country and go at Cal next week. Then they've got UConn should be a win, and then Miami. So
should be a dangerous word there, JT. Should is a dangerous word. We played Stanford at home. That should have been a win, and it didn't happen. How are we not killing A.O. Manor on 4th and 9?
We gotta have it this weekend.
You absolutely do if you're a Syracuse fan.
Nothing but confidence.
Let's stay on the fan side of things because an interesting line, an interesting matchup is how about the 17th ranked college football playoff Cyclones only being a 3-point favorite on the road at 2-6 Kansas. Why is the line there, Jake?
Oh, they are?
It's 2.5 now. It's even gone down.
Yeah. It's a team that's not playing good football right now. It's a team that offensively has just really sputtered out the last couple of weeks. You just give up you give up a touchdown in every single first possession of the last 4 games. You can't capitalize on turnovers. You kind of shoot yourselves in the foot. And you're just playing a Kansas team that record doesn't show it, but this team is not all that less talented than Iowa State. Like, if you wiped away, clean slate, these teams are 0-0. Like, I'd look at Kansas's roster and be like, I mean, that team's not much worse than Iowa State is.
You got to tell me twice. I hype them up more than anybody.
Yeah, Daniels he was playing better, and then he had to go and cough up a fumble in that damn Kansas State game. But if you eliminate that fumble, they win the football game, and he's playing good enough to – Iowa State really gave him problems in 2022 which makes me feel confident about this one. But I mean, it's still, I mean, Leipold's had Campbell's number the last, this is 2 or 3 years now. And you're going in the house of horrors in Kansas City, Arrowhead Stadium, where Iowa State just always finds a way to shoot themselves in the foot in that place.
All right. That's a fair breakdown to end tonight's show, but that is the Week 11 preview outside of our G5 game of the week, which preview is already out there live on our YouTube. Check it out. Army in North Texas, a great one you're going to want to watch on Saturday afternoon. Best bets, Dogs Dog, quickly to wrap up the show. I guess I should have thrown it to that first. Quick roundtable style, not a ton of description. Jake, whichever you want to start with, man.
I'll say which one, Dogs Dog or play. Let's do it. Favorite play. I don't know if you guys watch, if you watch the Cover 3 podcast and Bud Elliott plays like sicko mode. I'll play them both because I know neither of you guys are going to have either of these plays. I'll go UConn minus the 6.5 against UAB. I believe they're traveling on the road to Birmingham to play that one. Just think they're a better team. They can cover a touchdown against a bad UAB team. And then let's go. I think this one's Friday night. I got San Diego State minus the 2.5 at home against New Mexico. New Mexico, good offense, high up tempo, plays tough, but I think just Lewis is a better football coach, and I think that this is a team that can just get a good Mountain West win at home.
All right, JT, your best bet and Dogs Dog. Let's lead off with the best bet first.
All right, for my best bet, I'm gonna go with Iowa State minus 2.5.
Nice.
You bet against them
nice.
last week. Is that disclosed into the world yet?
Oh yeah.
No, we didn't bring it up on the podcast. You guys can call them out for it.
Yeah,
JT bet against Iowa State. Took Texas Tech money line last week.
Happiness.
I am a man who knows a good bet when I see one, and 14.5 was just too many points. And 2.5 is not enough. I still think Iowa State is capable of being the best team in the Big 12. They've obviously regressed their last 2 games, but when they can limit the mistakes, limit the penalties, limit the turnovers, I still think their floor and their talent can still carry them over a lot of teams in that conference. And I feel like this week is kind of a get right game for them. Will they'll limit some of those mistakes, and so give me them winning by a field goal. And then my Dogs Dog is probably another controversial pick, at least in here. It probably will be. I've got Missouri plus 2.5. I know a lot of people like to dog on them, but they're still, I don't think they're a ranked team, but I still think they're better than people are kind of giving them credit for, especially being a 2.5-point dog at home against an Oklahoma team who hasn't really earned it yet this year. It's a night game in Columbia, and I feel like that's just a spot where Drinkwitz and that staff can still pull out a win.
All right, I'll go quickly. My best bet. This one's a little bit greasy, but I'm going to take Iowa minus the 6 on the road at UCLA. I think when you take a look at what UCLA's faced the last couple of weeks, and Raiola, a true freshman quarterback, and Dowdell and Emmett Johnson, whichever way you want to swing it on the Nebraska side of things, they haven't seen a combo like Brendan Sullivan, who has the ability to run more than Ethan Kaliak-Manis and Dylan Raiola, plus Caleb Johnson, who's a better quality back, as it seems this far, better than Kyle Monungai, and way better than anything Nebraska's rolled out across the board. So with that 2 combo, I like Iowa to cover the number on the road. A little bit of a letdown style, still hanging on to the last 2 wins if you're UCLA, but I think Iowa covers that number on Friday night. My Dogs Dog, LSU. We already broke it down for you, so I'm not going to go into depth, but I like LSU at home at night against an Alabama team that's been a little inconsistent and is taking a step back. Reese.
Yeah, best bet. I'm going to stick around the exact same area with you, Parky. I'm going to Bama LSU over. I talked about the score I had. I just think Tom can really talk about it too, where these good teams, where if it's kind of your elimination game, like these are good offenses, they're going to unload the clip. They're going to give it everything they have. This is a game where you have to win. And how do you win games? You got to score more points than your team. So give me the over in that game. And then Dogs Dog, I'm not going to go away from them because they won for me last week. Jay talked about this before. I'll take Vandy plus 3.5 at home against South Carolina. They had plus 7 last week, and they won by 10 against Auburn. So Diego Pavia, man, this guy seems to be the real deal, and they're playing well at home. You only lost by the 3-2 Texas, and I don't know what the spread was in that one, but let's still go on that one. So why not? I'll give me Vanderbilt in this spot too. I think they can find a way to win this football game, and they'll crack the top 25 for sure if they win it.
It's almost like Diego Pavia has played well late in the season against an SEC team. Oh, wait, we've seen that before. So I like that pick there, Reese. But all right, that is the Week 11 preview. We covered a lot tonight. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the like button. JT, remind the people what's the code they use at shopnorivals.com.
Yes, sir. Use the code PTFS for
There it
Play
is.
the Fight Song.
That's it. Play the fight song. Jake, I saw the finger go up. Close us out with a thought here. What do you need?
Louisiana Monroe plus 7.5 at home. I needed to give my dog's dog. My dog's dog.
Sorry. I thought
Oh,
you
yeah,
did
he did
both.
get
Those were
two
both
best bets,
Okay.
right.
Sorry.
So I
didn't know
took three G5 plays this week. So there you go.
That's a
He's
great
letting you know he
story,
knows
team.
ball, people.
We can see how proud you are.
Knower of ball.
Knower of ball if you hit all three of those. But all right,
Put it
that
on
is
a
the Week
t-shirt.
11 we appreciate you being here. We'll see you next time. Reminder to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button before you go. Check out all of our content. Follow us on all the social medias and shopnorivals.com. Jake, take us away.
Play it.